breathe underwater.
Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show, y'all. Look here, it's another summer. It's time for Chris to go back to the north side, down there with his mother's friend, Miss Kathy, because she's going to be going to college, you know what I'm saying, during the summer, so she doesn't want to leave. Even though now he's 14, he can, you know what I'm saying, take care of himself, but she don't want to leave him there at the house as much as she's going to be away from the house by himself, right? So here's the thing. He's going to go back to the north side. And Shawn has been looking forward to this because over the last few weeks, their phone calls haven't been every day like he had grown accustomed to. Chris had started hanging out more with the gangsters, you know, because now his loyalties are being tested. He's trying to figure out his way, what he wants to do, right? Yes, he knows what he did early on. He knows the agreement that he made with Shawn when he became a vice lord. He knows that he's supposed to be gathering information and reporting it back to Shawn so that they can get the advantage, you know what I'm saying? So Shawn is manipulating him all the way, but so that he can move up in the rankings and within the organization. Like I said, he's very ambitious. But now Chris is trying to figure out, you know, should he continue to do this? And the main sticking point for him is that he's developed this relationship with the BM that knew his father and the other old heads of the org that knew his father, that talked fondly about him. They've accepted the fact after all of these years that he just messed up and they didn't know what he was doing. They thought he was getting high, spending the money, whatever the case may be, on some bull crap. Turns out that that's not what he was doing at all. He had to get the bills paid so that they wouldn't end up out on the streets. So when he disappeared, he just never came back. He never came back. So he figured that he was doing the right thing, but it really ended up hurting Chris and Lisa because they felt like he abandoned them all of these years. And by that, Chris grew up without his father. Now he's spending all this time with these BMs and growing closer and closer to them. And at the same time, he's learning what it means to be a gangster versus what it means to be a vice lord. Yeah, he knows all the vice lord literature. Now he's learning the gangsters literature, right? And when I say literature, it's actually stuff that you have to learn, read, memorize, and be able to quote back to the individuals that you are subordinate to. And they do that because they want you to know this. They want you to absorb this. They want you to drink this. And by doing that, it becomes part of you. And you become subservient to that. Once that ideology impresses upon you the what it's all about, you're locked in. You're locked in. But see, this was difficult for Chris because he had pledged his life to be a vice lord and then agreed to go on this mission, so to speak, to infiltrate the gangsters organization. But he's learning all of these things about being a gangster. And he's learning all of these things about his father. And he's a child at the same time. So it's hard for him to compartmentalize that. It would be hard for a grown man to do. It would be very difficult for a grown man to do that. So Chris is having a hard time. So the more he spent time with the gangsters, the less time he was spending talking to Shawn and telling Shawn what was going on and giving him that inside intel. But now he's getting ready to go back. Spend the summer on the north side of the city and spend some time with Shawn. So he's saying his goodbyes to his gangster brothers on the south side. Again, none of them know that he's really a vice lord or that he's pledged vice lord. And everybody's telling him how they're going to miss him and all of this and that. And they'll see him when he gets back. And he really doesn't want to go, but his mom is pushing the issue and he needs to go. So she takes him over there. and she leaves him, crying. He doesn't want to stay. And Shawn is wondering what is going on. Because Shawn, like I say, he's in his 20s. He's an older guy, much older than Chris. So he's trying to figure out, how am I going to be able to pull him back? Because Shawn thinks that he's losing. And the worst thing that can happen for Shawn is if Chris goes all in as a gangster and somehow or another it is found out later on that Shawn was using him to get information to infiltrate the gangster's organization to his own ends without permission. That's the key. Shawn had convinced him to do this without going to the people that he was under, the people that he was subordinate to. And if they found out what he was doing, don't get it twisted. They're not messed up with what he's doing. The organization, they would not be messed up with what he's doing. It's just that he didn't get it clear. Because something like that, if it's found out, it could cause a war. It could cause people to get killed. Chris could be killed like that if it's found out what he's doing. And that would cause Shawn trouble. And they would probably kill him too. So now that he has this opportunity to spend some time with Chris and talk to him, he's looking forward to trying to figure out what's really going on with him. Where does his loyalties lie? Where is his heart at? So when Chris gets there, after a couple of days, him and Shawn, they're kicking. He takes him all around the neighborhood, you know what I'm saying, reintroducing him to the brothers in an attempt to, try to sway him, to convince him that this is the right side that you should be on. That's what he's trying to do. But when he was able to get Chris by himself and talk to him, he asked him straight out. He said, who do you love the most? What organization? And Chris looked at him as a 14-year-old child, and he didn't know what to say. But Shawn knew his silence was about confusion. Not necessarily that he had gone all the way to the other side, but he was confused, and he didn't want to disappoint. Don't get it twisted. He still looked at Shawn as that first male father figure that showed him attention. Now, it doesn't have any clue that he's being manipulated and used. Not right now. He understands something's not right. But now he has other male father figures to look to that have an advantage over Shawn. They know his pops. And they're talking honestly and fondly about his father. And that's something that Shawn cannot do. So when Chris doesn't come forward with the answer and say that, I love Vice Lord more, Shawn gets concerned and he tells him, he said, look, he said, I know you might be confused about what's going on. I understand that you might not understand everything that's going on now. He said, but you got to trust me. You got to trust me. You got to keep this to yourself, and you got to continue to do what you're doing, letting me know what it is that they're up to. Everything. I know that I need to know everything that's going on within the gangsters organization. And Chris looks at him and he tells me, he said, I understand we've gone over that, but he's getting frustrated with Shawn. He's getting frustrated with Shawn because it seems to him that the only thing that Shawn is concerned about is him staying undercover and getting this information. Shawn had not asked him how he's doing. Shawn had not asked him, how does he feel about learning this about his father? He's not asking any of those questions that would show that he's concerned about Chris. And Chris is understanding, he's old enough to know that. He's old enough to understand that that is a problem. Shawn don't care about him. And now he's having to process it. Think about all of the stuff that's on top of him now. You got 2 street gangs that he belongs to, right? Both of these organizations don't like each other. And he's a part of one to get the information for the other. And now he finds out about his father. And his father abandoned him, the truth behind why his father abandoned him, and never meeting his father that he can remember. Doesn't even remember being held by his father. All of this is on this 14-year-old. This is too much for any child to have to bear. But he's wearing it. And now he's dealing with Shawn that is really about manipulating him. And he's fed up with it. He's gotten to a point to where he feels like lashing out. And he wants to tell Shawn to back up. But he don't want to disappoint him because he does have this affinity for him. So Shawn sees it. He recognizes the signs. And he backs up because he's a master at manipulation. And he knows when he's pushing too hard. So he does what a lot of people do in the game. He deflects. So he starts to scramble his brain and try to figure out, okay, what do I need to say to get him to calm down and not just walk away from this? And it dawns on Shawn. Let me ask him how he's doing. And he said, man, how you doing? Let's just talk. And Chris's eyes light up because to him, it's like, okay, he understands. Not realizing that this is Shawn continuing to manipulate him. But Chris goes right into it and he says, I'm not doing good. And so he starts to tell Shawn about what he learned about his father and what everybody's saying about him, and nobody knows where he's at, and he wants to find him. And when he says that to Shawn, Shawn grabbed it. He said, well, let's find him. Let's try to find him. See, everybody else has said we don't know where he's at. Shawn has no clue where he's at, doesn't even know where to begin to look. But he tells him exactly what he wants to hear. Let's find him. Let's try anyway. And that's all any child in Chris's position would want. Let's just try. No guarantees. For all anybody knows, he could be dead. Nobody knows. Right? So they figure out, they go talk to, Shawn's mom and start asking her a lot of questions about Chris's pops. So she starts to tell them as best as she could remember, as much as she could about him. And she told him that he was a nice guy. And that Lisa was devastated when he left, especially with a newborn. And they had no clue where he went or why. Now, Chris is telling Miss Kathy what he's learned, but he's not telling her how he learned it. You feel what I'm saying? Because he's afraid that she might figure out something and get both him and Shawn in trouble. So he's telling her that he's learning these things, not knowing that Lisa had already told Miss Kathy that he was a gangster. Not knowing that. Now, Miss Kathy's not sure, but she does understand that if it's found out that he's a gangster, he could be in some serious trouble on the north side. So she pulled Shawn to the side. She said, make sure nothing happens to him. And he told her, he said, Mom, I got him. We got him. He's going to be straight over here. But she said, do you know that he's supposed to be a gangster? So he tells his mom, don't ever repeat that out loud. Don't do that. And he confides in her. He says, we got something going on. And that made her super angry. She said, don't you be using that boy. Because Miss Kathy, she wasn't green. She just didn't like what was going on or something. She wasn't green to the streets. She understood how things go and how treacherous it could be. But Shawn looked at her. He told her, he said, we got him. He's going to be all right. But she felt the need to warn Miss Lisa because she thinks something is wrong. But she's not going to do it right now. She's going to wait. She don't want to put too much on Miss Lisa's mind because she's going to school right now. But for the rest of the summer, she was going to keep her eyes on Chris and make sure that Shawn did right by him and that he was okay. So when she had the opportunity later on, she pulled him to the side and she said, look, Don't you let nobody over here know anything about what you got going on back home. And she looked at him and gave him that look. You know how women look at you when they know something and you don't think they know, but they letting you know that they know. She gave him that look. Do you understand what I'm saying to you, boy? He looked back up. He said, yes, ma'am. I understand. And she said, don't you let Shawn get you in no trouble. And when she said that, that sparked something in him. Because why would Shawn's mother say that? Why would she say that? Because she knows her son. And she knows that he's ambitious. The mother knows the child. I'm telling you. The mother knows that child. And she knows that Shawn is ambitious. So Chris goes on, and 1 week leads to 2, 2 weeks lead to 3, and everything is okay. And him and Shawn are redeveloping that bond that they had that first summer. And he's learning some more things and growing in Vice Lord doctrine. He's learning all the different things, and now he's running around with the younger ones on the north side of town that are Vice Lord, and he's enjoying himself. He's enjoying himself. And he's almost forgotten about the life that he has on the south side. He's fully involved in the things that are going on the north side. So one day, they went to a park that's on the north side that mostly Vice Lords hang out in. Mostly Vice Lords hang out in. But people from all over come there. And this one particular day that they were there, he sees this young girl that he recognizes. And this young girl lives on the south side. And she recognizes Chris. They go to the same school. So she looks at him and she sees how he's dressed and the people that he's hanging with. She's not affiliated or anything like that, but she knows what she knows. So when she looks at him, she sees he's acting like one of them. And she looks at him, he looks at her, they look at each other. And that unsaid communication took place. And the look that he gave her was like, help me, don't hurt me. And that look that she gave him was like, what are you doing? I thought you were on this side, meaning the south side. And without saying a word, both of them had a conversation that changed everything for Chris. Because now he felt a fear wash over him, just came over him. It's like, is she going to say anything? Is she going to tell it? So he rushed to her. And he said, hey, how you doing? She spoke to him, said, hey, I'm doing fine. How are you? And she said, what are you doing, Chris? And he said, what are you talking about? She said, you're dressed like a Vice Lord. You look like a Vice Lord. You're hanging with Vice Lords. And he said, I'm not a Vice Lord, though. She said, you're not. He was like, no, I just got to stay over here with my mama's friend during the summer because she's going to school. She said, oh, okay. But she looked at him. She gave him that look. Even though she was young, too, she had that woman's intuition. She looked at him. She figured he was lying, but hey, give him the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean? Give him the benefit of the doubt, she said. So he said, hey, I'll see you around. She said, yeah, I'll see you. He said, could you keep this between us? And she said, yeah, I'll do that. I won't say a word. I don't think your friends back home would take too kindly to the way you're acting over here. And he's like, yeah, I know, and laughed. And he walked off. So he gets back over there with his Vice Lord brothers, and they get to kicking it, but he keeps looking back over his shoulder, and he's wondering what she's thinking. And she keeps looking at him. She can't take her eyes off of him. Because she's wondering what is being said. At the end of the day, the whole shenanigan, the whole thing is starting to break down because he's starting to feel a fear that he hadn't felt before when it came to dealing with this situation. Now, somebody that lives on the side of town where he lives knows about what he's doing. And he's afraid that it could lead to him getting hurt. So he doesn't know what to do about it. So now the summer is still moving. The summer is still moving. Him and Shawn, they have reestablished their closeness, and it's almost time for him to go back. He's got 1 week left before he goes back to the South Side. 1 week left before he goes back to the South Side. And Shawn is trying to make sure that he understands that you got to stay secretive about this. You cannot let them know that you're vice lord. And Chris tells him, I get it. We don't have to go over that anymore. He's starting to show frustration because now he's about to go back home. And he's feeling like a ping pong ball that's just being hit back and forth by the two opposing gangs. And he doesn't like the situation that he's in. He didn't understand when he agreed to do this how stressful this was going to be. And no 14-year-old should have to deal with this amount of stress. So it's time for him to go back. It's time for him to go back. And his mom picks him up and she thanks Miss Kathy for letting him stay, talking about she'll see her next summer and all this and that. She said, that's fine. So Miss Kathy, she looks at him and she gives him a hug and she gives him that look. And she said, do you remember what I told you? And he was like, yes, ma'am. She said, that applies at home too. Be careful. Be careful. And he looked at it, he told her. Now, on the way home, his mom, she's talking to him, and she told him that Miss Kathy and her had talked. And she was wondering what was going on with him. And she asked him, is there anything that you need to tell me? Is there anything that's going on that can cause you any kind of trouble? And he assured her no. He had become a skilled liar, a skilled manipulator. Think about this. Before that summer that he went down to the north side to hang with Shawn and spend the summer down there while his mother went to school, this was an honest kid. This was an honest kid that did not lie to his mom. He was a teenager, a young teenager at that. But now, because of the affiliations, both of them, he had become a skilled liar, manipulator, and could deceive you. But again, he was still a child, and the mother knows the child. The mother knows the child, and she's seeing the lies all over his face, but she doesn't push. She doesn't push because she also sees his father in him. And she knows that if she pushes too hard, that it could spook him. And she did not want to lose him like she lost her man, his father. She didn't want to do that. So she backed up and she said, well, okay, if anything you want to talk to me about anything, come to me. If you find yourself in something and over your head, come to me. She's throwing all the bones at him. She's giving him every hint that she knows something is up with these gangs, and she wants him to feel like he can trust her. And he continues to be silent about it, but he knows that something's got to give because now he's got to switch back to being a gangster. And now he's wondering about the girl that he met in the park, and is she going to say something? It's a lot going on, y'all. A lot going on. And you're going to have to come back and listen to the next episode to find out what else is going on with Chris. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.
I've been trying to breathe underwater.